Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome back. Last time we finished our action bar. Today we start working on the dashboard screen. Before we do that, let's add in a screen manager. This is the widget responsible for switching out your different screens based on what the user currently wants to view. So you see when you click Shipments, it replaces the dashboard widget with the Shipment widget. The same thing when I click Clients here, it replaces the Shipment widget with the All Clients screen. Let's go ahead and add that real quick, then start working on our dashboard. First, let's close off the action bar code to give ourselves more room to work. Next, let's go to this bottom box layout and give it some padding so that our screen manager doesn't stick to the edges of our screen. Now let's add the screen manager widget. Let's give the screen manager an ID so we can reference it later in Python. Next, we want to define the animation used to replace our screens. In our case, we will use the swap transition. You can use others like the fade transition too. Now we need to import this transition into our dashboard widget, so let's go to the top of this file and simply import swap transition from the screen manager widget file in Kivy. With that done, we now need to add at least one screen to our screen manager. The first screen added is going to be the default screen, so in our case, this will be the dashboard screen. As such, let's give this screen a name to reflect that. The name is what helps the screen manager to know which screen to shift to when requested. That's it for now, so let's go ahead and save this. If we run this now, you will see that pretty much nothing changes. This is because even though we've added a screen manager and a screen, this default screen has nothing to show, thus it looks like we didn't add anything. Let's go ahead and create the dashboard page now and add it to the default screen. To do that, let's go to our Pages folder. Remember, we said all our pages or screens will be in this folder. Let's go ahead and create a new folder. We'll call this Dashboard. Now, in the Dashboard folder here, let's create a new file. We need 3 files actually. The first one is the init file to make this a package. Next is the dashboard.py file, and then finally, the file to contain the styles for the dashboard. With that done, let's create the widget class for our dashboard screen. And as always, we will start with the imports. First, we'll need the app class so we can access our theme. Next, we need the builder to use our Kv strings. Next, let's get some properties we will use. Finally, we need the box layout, which will be the main container. Next, let's create the dashboard class since this is a custom widget. Remember, everything in Kivy is just a widget, even a custom screen like this. Next, let's initialize our screen, and now we are ready for styling. This time, instead of using a builder string, we will use a builder file to style our widgets. Let's now go into this dashboard.kv file and start styling the dashboard. As usual with styles, we first open up the class we want to apply the styles to. For now, just to test that everything is working, let's just add in some properties for the dashboard first. Let's set the children placement to be top to bottom first. Next, we give this dashboard's children some spacing, and then for now, let's just add in a label here, just to test that everything is working smoothly. The label's text is going to be dashboard. Next, let's save this and go to the init file now. Here, let's import that dashboard widget. Next, let's import that dashboard into our main.kv because that is where all our widgets are. Let's go up here and import the dashboard from the pages like this. With that done, we can now go to our screen here and import that dashboard. Let's finally give this dashboard an ID so we can access it across the app. Now, before we run this, let's go to our Pages folder and create a new file. This file should be in the Pages folder, not the Dashboard folder. Let's call this init.py. In this file, we want to import our dashboard from the Dashboard folder. Alright, save this now, and let's run our app. We expected to see a label, but we currently can't. That is because the label's color is currently white, so let's give this label a different color first. Go to the dashboard styles here, and set this label's color to red. Alright, now let's save this and run it now. Now we see this red label, meaning we are indeed showing our dashboard screen. Excellent. Now let's start adding our widgets to the dashboard screen. On this tutorial, we are adding these summary cards up here. Let's remove our placeholder label here and simply add in the box layout to contain our summary widgets. Let's give this box a height. In our case, we want this box layout to take about 10% of the available height. Next, we'll space out the widgets of this box layout 24 pixels apart. Our summary cards here are custom widgets, so we need to create them now. But first, let's duplicate this box and move it down to take the rest of the space. Let's save that and start creating that custom widget. All right, so let's go back to the dashboard here and simply duplicate this and call this duplicate the summary card. Before we start styling the summary card, let's give it some properties as usual. The first one will be the icon to display. This icon is that icon. Next, let's get the text properties. So first, we want the title property. Next, we want the count property. And finally, the percentage change or the difference property. Finally, we want the property to set the icon's color. With those properties, we are ready to start styling this widget. Let's go to our styles file, go all the way down here, and open up the summary card class so Kivy knows the next styles belong to the summary card. In this card, let's first add in some padding, then let's go ahead and also space out our widgets. All right, now we want a background color for this summary card. So how do we make backgrounds? First, we open up our canvas and then add in the color instruction. Next, we set the color to be a white color in our theme file. Remember, the card has rounded edges. Let's go ahead and use a rounded rectangle, and you should pretty much know how it goes from here now. The position of this rounded rectangle is going to be the position of the summary card itself, and the size is going to be the size of the summary card. Finally, the roundness or the radius is going to be 12 pixels. That's it for the background. Now let's add the widgets. We'll start with the icon first. As we want the icon to be centered, we'll use an anchor layout because by default, anchor layout centers all of its children. We want this anchor layout to take up about 40% of the available width. Now let's add in the icon. Since this icon has a background, we'll use our background box widget. Let's give it an ID because we will need to reference this in the Python file to set the background shortly. We want to set a static size for this icon's background box, so let's set the size hint on both axes to none. Next, let's set the sizes. So for X and Y, this is going to be 54 pixels. Next, let's set the default color of the box to be white. We'll be setting the actual color in the Python file. Finally, the border radius of this icon box will be 6 pixels. All right, now let's add in our icon. Remember, we already created a widget called icon button, so to save time, we're just going to use that widget. It is a button, but we will only use it as an icon here, so we simply won't give it any click event handlers. Let's go ahead and add in that icon, and then we want to set the color of this icon to be the icon color that we created for the summary card. And then the font size is going to be 24 pixels. Now note that we don't need to import the icon button to use it here because we already imported it in our main.kv file. Since all our code will end up in the main window anyway, all the imports in there are available to all files. That's it for the icon. Next, let's add in the text. Let's go down here and add in a box layout to contain all our text. Next, we set the orientation to vertical, and now let's add in that text. First, I want all the labels to be in their own boxes. Let's now add the label for the title. Next, let's set the text in this label to be whatever the user set as the title. And then, as always, the text size should be the size of the label itself. Next, let's set this label's font to be the subheading font. Finally, the color for this label is going to be the primary text color in our theme. Next, let's go ahead and add the count and percentage difference labels. We'll start with the count label. Let's put it in its own separate box layout. Let's also make this box take up 50% of the available width. Now, let's add the count label and set the text of this label to be whatever the user set as the count. Since count is a numeric property, which is a number, we convert it to a string first. Next, let's set the text size to be the size of the label. We want this to be bold, so the font name will be the heading font. Next, let's give this label a really big font size, which is the H1 font size in our theme. Now let's set the color of this label to be the primary color, and then let's simply align this to the top. That's it. Next, let's add the box layout to contain our percentage label. Next, make this box layout take up the remaining 50% width. Next, let's set orientation to vertical because we will use an empty widget to pad our label to the bottom. So now, add in that empty widget. You normally won't be able to see this widget as it has no display properties, but it's there, somewhere around here. All right, now let's set the size for this widget. We want a static height, so the size hint y is going to be none because the height of this widget is going to be 12 pixels. Now let's go ahead and add in the difference label here. Next, set its ID to difference. We'll need this shortly. Let's set this label's text to say 0% by default. We're going to be updating this in Python. Next, set the text size to be the size of this label, and then set the font to be the heading font. Next, set the font size to be H6, which is the smallest size possible in our theme. Next, we set the font size to default to the theme's gray text color. Now let's vertically align this to the top and then horizontally align this to the right. With that, we are through with the summary card styles. Now remember we said we'll be setting some of these properties in Python like the icon's background. Let's go ahead and bind to the icon's color. So here's the thing. If you have properties like icon color and difference, to get an event when that property is changed, you just create a function called on_, and then the property name itself. So here we have an icon color property, so our function is on _icon color. What this does is every time you change this icon color, this function is going to be called, and its arguments will be the instance that made this property change and the new value of the property. This concept is called data binding in Kivy, and it's a pretty powerful way to manage state in your custom widgets. If we open up our app here real quick, you see that this icon has this blue color, and its background has the same color, but with reduced opacity. We set this opaque color in our function here when the user sets the icon's color. Color in Kivy is set in the RGBA format, which means red, green, blue, and the alpha channel. So we take the new icon color and simply change its opacity to about 20%. We then set this reduced opacity color as the background for our icon. Remember, we set the ID of our icon's background box to icon background. So we access that box using its ID. This means in the summary card, get all the IDs, and in those IDs, get the widget with the ID of icon background, then set its background color equal to this new color that has a 20% opacity. All right, that's it for the icon. The next thing we want is to update the difference label's text. Remember, we set a default text of 0% before. Let's bind to the difference property, and remember I said to bind to a property, you simply do on _ and then the property name itself. The next thing we want is to get that widget, which is the difference widget. So we are pretty much saying in the summary card, get all the IDs of the summary card. Now get that widget with the difference ID. Now, if you check here, we say +27 or -2 or 0 if there's no difference. So in this function, I want to check what the new value is, and then add in that plus or minus or nothing if it's just 0. To do that, I'm just going to say if the difference is greater than 0, then we want to add in a plus. So we get our difference widget and set its text property equal to plus, and then whatever the new property is. So if we set the difference to say 20, it's going to read as +20%. Now you'll notice the text color also changes based on whether the difference is positive or negative. So here the difference is positive. We'll set the text color to our primary green color. Now let's take care of the situation where the difference is less than 0. So if it's less than 0, it's already got the negative sign. So just set the text to whatever the new value is, and then the percentage sign. Now, let's set the color to be a reddish color, and then finally, if it's neither positive nor negative, which pretty much means the difference is 0, we just want to change the text color to be the grayish color in our theme file. That's pretty much it for this one, so save this file, and let's try out our summary card in the dashboard. So let's go to our dashboard styles here. Now go to our summary box and add our custom summary card. Remember, our summary card needs some properties, so the first one is the title. We'll set this to new packages. Next, let's set how many packages we have with the count property. Then the difference is just going to be 27. Next, let's add in the icon for the card, and then finally set the icon's color. What I'm going to do now is simply duplicate this a few times, then save the file. Now let's run it and see what we currently have. All right, so as you can see, we have our widgets here, but it's overflowing a bit, and that is because this screen is a bit small, but if you maximize this, it looks all right. And since this app is designed to be used in full screen anyway, this works well for our needs. All right, so now let's simply change the rest of the cards to be what they're supposed to be. Let's update the this card to say ready for shipping, and how many are ready for shipping. Well, let's just set this to 128. You can set it to whatever you want, and then set the difference this time to a negative value so that we can see that red color changing. Next, change the icon to icon truck. Again, these icons are available at feathericons.com, so you can go there and choose any icon you want. Now let's go for the next one, which is how many packages have been delivered. Let's set the count property to that, and then the difference for this one is going to be 0. The icon I'm going to use is icon box for this one. Now let's add in the last one, which is how many leads were generated so far. Let's set this to 21. You can set it to whatever you want. I'm going to set the difference to 29, and then let's change the icon to be icon users. And now let's go ahead and change the colors. So for the leads, the color is going to be the secondary color. And then for our delivered icon, I'm going to change this to be the primary color. And then for our ready for shipments icon, we'll use the warning color. Now save this and let's run it again. This concludes the tutorial as we have our summaries all done. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to like this video to help it get recognized. Also, subscribe to the channel to get more content like this. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.